you so much for joining this webinar. Now over to you, Hemang. Hemang is the co-chairman of FSM IPR Council. Over to you, Hemang. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much, Asacham, Nahid, Yashpal, everyone for organizing this session. Thank you all for joining us, this morning. Uh, in the words of, I guess, one of our fictional innovators in Hindi cinema, Punsuk Wangdu or Rancho, I really hope all is well at your end. These are trying times, so hope everyone's doing well around yourself, your near and dear ones. Now, startups are a key driver of growth, and in India, especially in the past few years, I'm sure you are well accustomed to seeing the progress startups have made in the country. They fuel innovation, right? But a very simple premise that startups are going to look at a problem differently. They're going to create new products. So naturally, they are going to fuel innovation. I also believe that it creates the perfect opportunity for them to generate intellectual property. Now, in the visibility which I have mostly in the IoT domain as such, there's an interesting study which NASSCOM put out last year. They studied the patents filed in the IoT industry as such in the years 2009 to 2019, so roughly a decade. And in this decade, they said that there were about 6,000 patents which were filed. Now, curiously, the most progress came in the last 5 years, which is from 2014 to 2019. So, out of those 6,000 patents, about 5,000 were filed in that 5 year duration. Now, that shows the amount of progress that the country has been making in this domain, and startups are a key contributor to this. In 2016, we launched the startup IP policy or the startup IP incentives. Uh, and even before that, India has always had numerous schemes which supported startups and MSMEs for the generation and protection of intellectual property. So we thought today would be an opportune time to discuss, what are the various schemes and incentives for startups and SMEs. So today, I'm very pleased to welcome, all the, industry and government addresses which we are going to have today. We are joined by Mr. Sudipto Roy. He's the Vice President of Engineering at Qualcomm Technology. We are also joined by Ms. Meena Nagaraj, IAS Managing Director at Karnataka Innovation and Technology Society, Startup Karnataka. We are joined by Ms. Astha Grover, who heads the Startup India Hub and is, at Invest India. We have Ms. Deepti Ragula, who's the CEO of WE Hub, Government of Telangana, and Ms. Rashmi Pimpale, CEO of the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, RICH. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd like to start the discussion by welcoming Mr. Sudipto Roy first. Just a brief background of Mr. Roy. As a VP of Engineering at Qualcomm Technology Licensing in San Diego, Sudipto focuses on the world regional strategy and ecosystem engagements. His team leverages technology design, business, and IPR expertise to help strategic licensees, startups, universities, and governments to succeed in their business and policy goals while utilizing Qualcomm's technologies and innovations. He has been with Qualcomm for over 25 years in various pioneering and strategic roles. He has a wide span of expertise, right from 2G through 5G handset, infrastructure, IoT. I know him. I've had the fortune of knowing him really well. He's a very passionate technologist and a super helpful person. He holds a BSc from MS University of Baroda, MSc from Old Dominion University in Virginia, and has completed postgraduate programs in tech management, IPR law, artificial intelligence, and outside of work, he's involved in numerous volunteering activities. So, Mr. Sudipto, I would welcome you to provide your thoughts and views on the great work startups are doing, in India. Sudipto, you might be on mute.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Sorry, I'll go back to share. Okay. Is my presentation coming through? You're able
Yeah.
to see my presentation? Perfect. Good morning, everyone. And Hemang, thank you very much for that warm welcome. It's an honor to be present in this panel, sharing the stage with Ms. Grover, Ms. Nagraj, Ms. Ravula, Ms. Pimpale, colleagues from ASOCHAN, and obviously my dear colleagues Hemang and Anirban. And particularly a great shout out to all the startups and startup entrepreneurs who are present in the audience. I'll take a few minutes to talk about the importance of IPR for startups, particularly informed from Qualcomm's own journey. It may sound a little strange, but you have to remember that Qualcomm 35 years ago was actually a startup. We're founded by 7 pioneering individuals, 2 of whom were university professors. And actually, I was part of this team. The picture that you see where many of my colleagues are dancing in joy, this was the first time we made a CDMA call, end-to-end CDMA call. This is the moment that records that call. And we have had the privilege of sharing our system level innovations to practically anyone in the world. So starting out as a startup born out of university research here in San Diego, we never had in the wildest dreams even the concept that we would be able to share pioneering technologies generation after generation for practically everything that connects the world and everything that we use for power efficient computing. Here on this slide, I have the names of some giants whom, frankly, we didn't know. They were also startups in many cases. We partnered with them. They grew with our technologies and with their own innovation, which brings me to why is it that Qualcomm also focuses on startups? We actually go back to our roots, just like us and just like many of our other companies, both in the US and in India, who were also once small startups, but had the privilege of seeing spectacular growth at the scale of the internet. We are active in many regions throughout the world, fostering grassroots innovation. And particularly in India, we have been successful with many of our efforts. These efforts span university research, foundational research at the graduate postdoc level, startup incubation, about which I'll be talking in far more detail in the subsequent slides. We also work very closely with handset, laptop, IoT, infrastructure licenses in India, and obviously the operators in India who are some of the world's largest. And our ventures team is very active spotting interesting opportunities, synergistic opportunities to also invest in the growth of strategically aligned industries in India. Turning to startup incubation, about 6 years ago, when Prime Minister Modi made his first journey as a Prime Minister to the US, he made a request to our then CEO to help incubate, help foster India's hardware startups. India has plenty of startups, I think upwards of 50,000 startups. 10% of these startups are generally in the IT technology area, but a very smaller percentage of those actually focus on hardware and manufacturing. So in parallel to the Make in India slogan, we said, why not add design in India to that effort? And hence was born the Qualcomm Design in India Challenge. And this is an annual program that we run where we take roughly about 12, a dozen or so startups selected from about 10 to 15 times that number. We get several applicants in the range of 150 to 200 applicants every year. We select exactly 12 of them, and we pace them through a variety of incubation programs. One of them is obviously technical enablement. We have state-of-the-art labs for 4G and now 5G, IoT, robotics, imaging. In fact, Hemang heads that lab in Bangalore. We provide many monetary incentives and prizes at the end of the competition. We provide mentorships for scaling business operations, and also we leverage the Qualcomm global network by helping the startups be successful not only in India, but also outside of India. And we provide a post incubation innovation commercialization fund. But the part that I want to talk and tell you some of the statistics about today is actually our IPR mentorship and patent generation program. This is a program that we added to our incubation palette of services about 3 years ago. And a bit later, you'll see how successful this program has been, not simply because of our efforts, but because of the hard work and enthusiasm that the startups have shown in protecting their own innovations. So we've been blessed. As I said, we've been able to pick a dozen startups every year. So far, we have incubated 65 through the 2020 cycle, 65 of India's top-notch startups. And they are doing outstanding work, cutting-edge work in every area of importance to India, whether it's smart cities or smart homes, medical technology, increasingly a lot of automotive and EV companies. Agri-tech, India is actually remarkably advanced in usage of technology for agriculture. Wearables, a lot of robotics and drones, drone startups in India. And then increasingly, we're beginning to find those who will aspire to become 5G based startups in the near future. Many of them have gone beyond technology and product success. In fact, 14 of them are Series A funded. We also have had a couple of successful exits. Many of them have launched commercial products and are on their version 2.0, 3.0 of the roadmap. We don't know their total capitalization, but we have an idea of the funds raised in recent times, and it's nearing $80 million. But the statistic that I'm most proud of is since we started the patent incentive, where we simply defray some of the expenses towards patent filing, and we pay for about 2 patents per startup per year. Guess what? The startup, that patenting behavior continues. And by some statistical analysis that we did, these startups have gone on to file 200 plus patents. And as Hemang said, this number actually represents a significant number of patents filed by IoT startups in India. So this is actually, this 200 number is a sizable percentage of the total number of patents filed by IoT startups. So it's a number we are very proud of, but more importantly, that startups should be very proud of. So why do we lay such an emphasis on IPR? As we have seen in our own journey, IPR protecting your hard-earned innovations from the get-go has numerous benefits. One of them is obviously it helps you from keeping a moat around your innovation to make sure that your competitors have a barrier, have a bar to copying your innovations and your ideas. And this also obviously proves to investors that you do have the technological niche and you have protected it, right? And it helps investors gain confidence in investing in your business. Absolutely, it helps with your company reputation and product image. It's a global recognition, both regional and global recognition, that not only your product is good, but you also have recognition from the government that your innovation is unique, it's novel, it's non-obvious, and it's worth protecting. And you can also, when collaborating with other companies, other partners, you can continue to protect your innovations. And should someone make unauthorized use of your IPR, it gives you the right to take legal action when it's needed. But most importantly, in most cases, it also allows you to license your innovations, monetize your IP, and earn in revenue, right? So there are numerous reasons as to why IPR is important, equally important as your technology innovation, as your business model innovation, as your customer acquisition efforts or your marketing efforts. This is an equal prong, equal opportunity endeavor that startups should engage in. So with this backdrop, among other incentives and other programs, we had the opportunity to bring a program that has been successful in other regions, particularly in Europe, before we brought it to India, where we thought that an e-learning platform, which is focused on providing IPR education to startups, micro and small enterprises, to frankly university professors, university researchers also who are engaged in research. We wanted to provide a way to understand IPR without much of the legal jargon that can often become a barrier to understanding. So we came up with a e-learning based platform which provides understanding of the following areas. How do you protect innovations with patents? How do you protect your creative assets such as software or your technical documentation? How do you protect your brand through trademarks? How do you integrate IP into your own business models and growth? How do you obtain value of your R&D efforts? And frankly, how do you use your innovations to gain quick access to the market? So these are the broad topics that we touch upon in our IPR course. And we call this course L2 Pro, a little acronym that stands for learn to protect, secure, and maximize your innovations. For this program, we're blessed to be able to have the guidance and partnership from DPIIT, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, from CPAM, which does a fantastic work of advancing IPR awareness in the country, IP India, and frankly, the author of the course, professors from, especially Professor Yogesh Pai from National Law University, Delhi. Collectively, we worked with all our partners and came up with this L2 Pro program. It took us about a year to write the content, get it vetted, get it tested so that it is the right content for startups that is respectful of their time. And here is a picture from the last time IMC was held in person, which was IMC 2019. And along with DPIIT Secretary Dr. Guruprasad Mahapatra, my lead and boss Alex Rogers, they inaugurated the L2 Pro Learning Program. And today now it is available from l2proindia.com on the website. And it's also available as an app both on Android as well as on iPhone as an e-learning course. So once you take this course, you would say that you can take it in 3 levels. You don't have to take all 3 levels. You can take them either at the basic level or proceed on to the intermediate level, or you can complete all 3 levels, which is the advanced level. Approximately taking this course should take about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours total to take all the 3 courses. Obviously, if you dive deeper into an area or try to understand a case study in more detail, it can take a bit longer, but 2 to 3 hours is what we recommend that you budget to take this course. The basic level is exactly what you would think it would be. It covers fundamentals of all forms of IPR and gives you the basic concepts of patents, trademarks, copyrights, geographical indicators, and other forms of IPR, including trade secrets. The intermediate level and advanced level get more interesting. They talk about commercialization. They talk about going beyond a patent, going to many patents. In fact, forming an IP portfolio. And in the advanced level, you start getting understanding of how IPR can help you in standards organizations and standards development organizations, and how to deal with disputes. So again, the idea here is not to provide a law course. Certainly there are other courses, or one can go to law school for such courses. The approach we took is, how do we remove the jargon, make this topic accessible, and more importantly, immediately usable as a startup founder. She thinks of her journey. She thinks of the many areas she has to invest in. We also try to help her remember that protecting your innovation is actually very key. Moving on, I also want to highlight some spectacular schemes that are available, and frankly, they're quite unique to India. And this is the SIPP scheme, the Government of India's facilitation for startups, Startup Intellectual Property Protection Scheme. And this scheme has the following features. You probably know that startups enjoy substantial discounts when it comes to filing fees. In fact, it's a 80% discount over what a large company would have to pay. But it gets better. Besides the filing fees, startups can access registered patent facilitators. These are either patent agents or patent attorneys who are registered with the Indian Patent Office, and they can assist startups with drafting patents to going through the prosecution process. And the beauty of accessing such expertise for the startups is that they bill the government. They don't charge the startups, and this facilitator's fee is actually something that is paid by Indian taxpayers' money, and this is a fantastic opportunity for the startups. It gets better. Startups can also request expedited examination, which can cut short the usual examination time by months. It is not unusual to hear of startups patent examined within a year or slightly less than a year lately, right? So this is really great. You have discounted fees. You can access a patent agent or a patent attorney whose fees will be paid by the government, and you can get expedited examination of your patent application, right? Similarly, there is a similar setup for trademarks also, which is also a very important aspect for branding for startups. So we'd like startups who are attending to this seminar to be aware of the SIPP scheme. Finally, some key takeaways. I touched upon many topics. The first one is to emphasize that in addition to your business model and development and your technology development, protecting your innovations is a very key part to your success as a startup. And as I stated, the benefits are numerous: competitive advantage, protection of your assets, raising your valuation, ability to raise money because now you have patents as your assets, and also potential of earning licensing income. And the government has powerful incentives that help startups with their IPR program. And programs like L2 Pro are a worthwhile investment of time to learn about this vast field of IPR and to demystify some of these complex concepts. With that, I'd like to say that it's always a great time to innovate and learn to protect your innovations. With that, Jai Hind, and I turn it back to Hemant.
Thank you, Sudipto. One question I received directly from one of the attendees was that what kind of support or encouragement have we seen from the government side towards these startups?
Yeah, so the government is actually very helpful. I can give you one example of when at the end of our incubation program, when we take our startups to meet with various government officials, whether it's DPIIT or Ministry of Electronics, because these are hardware startups, straight from the secretary down, they get ample encouragement, they get ample support to not only innovate and protect their IPR, but the government also opens up many other doors. Have you spoken to the Ministry of Agriculture? Have you spoken to the Ministry of Education? Have you spoken to the Ministry of Urban Development? So on and so forth. The government actually facilitates, opens many doors within the central government to help out. I'm a little less familiar with the state government, the government of Telangana, government of Karnataka, Andhra government, Tamil Nadu government, right? And other colleagues who are present in the panel can speak to the state government incentives, but the central government has been fantastic when startups come approach them. Lost your audio, Hemant, sorry.
Sorry. Thank you, Sudipto. I think this is great information, but I'd like to move on, and in the agenda of items, and Ms. Meena Nagaraj has joined us, so let me invite her over. A brief introduction for Ms. Nagaraj. Ms. Meena Nagaraj, CN, is an IAS and a managing director at Karnataka Innovation and Technology Society, Startup Karnataka. She is an IAS officer of the 2018 batch. As a director of electronics, IT, BT, and MD KIPS, She is spearheading the implementation of various schemes and programs of the department in a bunch of sectors, including information technology, biotechnology, electronics, animation, and gaming, and startups. She is ex officio managing director of Karnataka Innovation and Technology Society, KITS. KITS is the implementing arm of the department working for the promotion of IT, ITES, ESDM, startup, BT, AVGC sector in the state of Karnataka. Ms. Nagraj, thank you so much for joining us, and I'd like to invite you to share a few words with us.
Thank you and namaskara to all the members present here today at the webinar to discuss the topic on IP schemes and incentives for startups and SMEs. As you're all aware, startups play a key role in promoting innovation and economic growth. They do this by contributing to new business ideas, capital formation, and increasing employment generation. Identification and protection of intellectual property is indeed a very crucial for startups to safeguard their unique products. IP plays a very vital role in facilitating the process of taking innovative technology to the marketplace and enhancing the competitiveness of technology-based enterprises. With the advent of intellectual property regime in India, central government and state governments have initiated several schemes, policies, and programs for increasing awareness for the intellectual property rights and extend assistance to educational institutions, government organizations, and startups, etc., in protecting their intellectual property work across the country. Some of these schemes and programs work with the assistance of professional IP practitioners who are also empaneled in respective departments, programs, or schemes, while others provide monetary assistance to startups, inventors, and institutions, etc. Government of India has launched these schemes to promote startup growth by providing them conducive and robust ecosystem, which has in turn led to encourage and protection of IPRs. Not delving too deep into it, as one of our Government of India officials have already highlighted on the factors, some of them, of course, being the launch of the Startup India initiative and formation of National IPR policy in 2016, support international patent protection in electronics and IT, a scheme to support international patent protection by SMEs and technology startups. Scheme for building awareness on intellectual property rights for micro and small and medium enterprises. This scheme aims to identify IPR needs of the MSME industry and advise to strengthen the IP portfolio. And of course, the patent facilitation program itself. The state of Karnataka has always cherished its leadership position in both domestic as well as global maps of entrepreneurship and innovation, as we have almost the highest number of startups in the country, being a startup capital with around 20,000 tech startups, and of them being 6,000 being product or related startups. Government of Karnataka has always ensured that inputs from the industry partners and academia institutions are included in all decisions taken for the growth of ecosystem. The role of Government of Karnataka has been that of a facilitator to bring together all the right stakeholders to develop the state's ecosystem via domestic innovation. While government support has largely been towards creation and development of vibrant startup ecosystem, the private sector has been supporting this growth by investing in success of individual startups. Government of Karnataka has been pioneer in announcing sector-specific policies in information technology, biotechnology, electronic system design and manufacturing, and animations, visual effects, gaming, and comics to give a push to the growth of technology sector and innovation in the state. All our sector-specific policies provide reimbursements, tax incentives, patent costs, etc. for startup, keeping in mind the challenge faced by these respective sectors. The patent reimbursement incentives launched by Government of Karnataka aims to develop the state as a center of innovation and research and development. By doing this, we believe that the new companies and innovation technologies will be provided more conducive atmosphere to emerge. In all our policies, we have ensured that the domestic patent is reimbursed up to a sum of rupees 2 lakhs, and international patents are reimbursed up to a sum of rupees 10 lakhs. And also the state has provided a dedicated startup IP support cell in our industry and commerce department. Incentives of technology upgrade, quality certification, and patent registration under the Electronic System Design and Manufacturing Policy of 2013. We provide inputs and incentives under these policies. Similarly, in all sectors, as I mentioned, in AVGC, biotechnology, for BT companies and AVGC companies, Karnataka, based out of Karnataka, startups can apply for patent reimbursement. There are just some of the incentives offered by the government towards startups and SMEs in the intellectual property area. But the question still remains, are all relevant stakeholders aware of these incentives? This is indeed a need to make startups aware of various government schemes, incentives, and reimbursement schemes, IP filing rebates, and tax rebates to reduce the regulatory burden on startups and allowing them to focus on their core business and to keep compliance costs low. Webinars like this will showcase such schemes and programs to a larger mass and will help achieve this goal. The role and significance of innovation and skills go beyond the objective of economic success. We need to proactively engage with emerging trends that are shaping society and invest in the research needed to shape technology for a brighter future. I strongly suggest that we all join hands to work with all partners to make sure every opportunity is afforded to give success a chance. To conclude, I encourage everyone to keep the conversation going, to reach across traditional boundaries and divides to support policies that drive innovation, benefiting both our own communities and more broadly society at large. And thank you so much for ASSOCHAM for giving us this opportunity to showcase Karnataka. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nagaraj. And it's truly amazing to know all these initiatives that the Karnataka government has had. My colleague and I have had the privilege of speaking with some of the innovators at Startup Karnataka. They had very, enriching questions, the really detailed questions on how they can, think about intellectual property. And I think this is one thing which a lot of people were not getting access to. So with the support of ASSOCHAM, especially ASSOCHAM IP Facilitation Center, and we have a number of incubators. So Qualcomm has been running one for the last 5 years for the hardware IoT ecosystem. But there are, I have friends in different MNCs, different Indian companies. So we are all excited by the amount of work that the startups are doing. One question that I often get from innovators, which I'd like to ask you, is that a number of these startups, let's say they're based in Karnataka, can they apply for incentives both at the national level and at the state level? Or is there any exclusion that we can only go for the government of Karnataka incentives and not others? It's a misconception which I get, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Hemang, no, I think startups have the right to avail any kind of funding that is available not only in our state, if even other states do provide and they have no boundary limits, like Maharashtra, for example, has no specific indication in their startup policy that they have to be based out of Maharashtra. So there are a lot of startups of Karnataka, especially the BT area, where I wouldn't say the kind of funding, though Karnataka gives the highest grant funds because no other state provides fund right up to 50 lakh rupees in terms of grant money. So they do apply at, the DPI IT projects or the DST projects, so that our policy does not bar any startup from availing any funds in either in the central government or across any other states. In between policies is what we have banned. So ESDM, if they've availed, again, they cannot avail in the IT policy.
Sure. I think that's very helpful information. Thank you so much. And there is one other question, if I can get a minute more of your time.
Yeah, sure.
Can startups get the financial support before they, let's say, in case of IP, before they file the patent application, can they get financial support?
Before filing application, it's not allowed because see, we go through an audit process. So at least when they're filed, we do try to give about, some amount of progress where about 50% is allowed. And then it's again policy dependent. Some are 25%, some are 50%, but some amount of patent filing should have happened. But we do allow for market reimbursement and those kind of things.
Yeah, and just for the benefit of startups, I think that's one, having worked with them over the years, they're just not aware about this market benefits. Ma'am, if you don't mind, can you please expand a bit on that? What does that generally cover?
Usually startups do have opportunities to showcase their innovations either in the domestic market across various expos, also in the international level. So all policies allow startups to claim a reimbursement of up to 5 lakh rupees during a policy period if they have had any expenditure for, lab to market kind of expenditure that they have incurred. Because there are a lot of like Dubai Expo, which is likely to happen. So they do have startups do go and showcase their innovations there. And if they have incurred any such expenditure, we would be able to reimburse in our policies.
Great. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think this is excellent information that you have shared with us. I appreciate you for your time and for sharing all these insights. Thank you again from all of us.
Thank you.
So we have a slight change in the speaking order. Ms. Asta Grover has had an emergency at her end, and she'll be joining us a bit later. So if Ms. Deepti Rabula is okay, I'd like to bring her on. But before I do that, let me just share a bit about Ms. Deepti Rabula. She is the CEO of WE Hub, which is the Women Entrepreneurs Hub. It's a government of Telangana initiative for promoting and fostering women entrepreneurship in Telangana and across India. As an electronics engineer by profession and passion, she has 15 years of experience in working across USA with Palm, Nokia, Atheros, Qualcomm, LifePoint, Teradyne, among others in RF communication roles. She joined the government of Telangana as a joint director for electronics in 2016 and has been appointed as CEO of WE Hub since 2017 when it was incepted. She is a strong proponent of girls in STEAM, STEAM empowerment through economic enablement, women in leadership roles, and women in decision-making spaces. She is working towards creating a work environment that is gender diverse and on constructing economic independence mechanisms as a tool for women enablement. Thank you so much, Ms. Rabula, for pioneering all this work, and I'd like to invite you for sharing some words with us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hemang, for all the nice introduction. Good morning, Ms. Nagaraj, and good morning to all my fellow panelists. So it's a pleasure being here, and IP is one of the very interesting topics because, as you rightly pointed out, and ma'am has spoken quite a bit about it, a lot of the country's strengths, many countries' strengths is actually determined by the amount of IP it actually holds. So I think in the many ways the shifts are happening. There is a lot of emphasis on the need for incorporation and having much more original inventions. So after me is my colleague Rashmi, who actually has a lot more deep dive conversations about IP. So I will leave all the really important stuff to her, but I will only talk about what we are trying to do in the state of Telangana to support startups. And also, as Meena ma'am had already pointed out, there is a lot of support which is already existing for the startups in the central government. And the state government's policies are to make sure, whether it be Karnataka or Telangana or AP or any other state that you take, is to make sure that we can bridge the gap that may be there for any startup to go from start to finish. So while the central government is actually the propellant, we are actually making sure that we can actually make the startups cross the bridge. So coming down to that, I'll start off by a little bit of introduction of what we are trying to do at VHub. Sorry, not at VHub, in Telangana. So to start off with, in Telangana itself, as you guys know, Telangana is one of the newest states of, I think we lost that crown now, but Telangana is one of the youngest states in India. And we started out in 2014. And one of the first laws that was passed in the state legislature was a law called TSI Pass. So the main reason for having the TSI pass law is to make sure that, any entity, any scale of enterprise, including a startup, can get a single window clearance mechanism. So one of the first laws that was passed, and the uniqueness of that law is to clear any application for support for any sector of industry, to get all that within 14 days. If, let's say, if it's a company which is actually a strategic investment, they can get all the clearances and support that is needed, and also approvals needed within 14 days. And one of the unique things is, if the file is not approved on the 15th day or a decision is not made, the applicant can actually sue the state government for delay in the application, and on the 15 days deemed approved. So that is the first law that the Telangana legislature had actually passed way back in 2014. So that kind of shows the seriousness that the state government and the entities and all the departments have towards promoting and fostering more industry to be a part of the Telangana ecosystem. And Hemang, I'm very happy to share that Qualcomm is a big part of everything we do in Hyderabad. And Shashi is a big proponent of the support that Telangana government provides, and he's actually been a great ambassador and an evangelist for us as well. So thank you for that. So that is something we are doing in the state. The second thing that I would like to highlight also is that in addition to having this TSI pass law, we also have sectoral policies. The reason I'm explaining all this on an IP forum is because we do not look at it, as Meena ma'am had very nicely pointed out, we do not look at industry as one. We don't say that, there is one industry policy that every sector has to conform to. So what we've actually created is many sectoral focused policies. We have policies for LED, we have policies for core manufacturing, and we have policies for ESDM, we have policies for emerging technologies also. We have policies for startups, we have policies for aerospace, we have policy for defense, we have policies for life sciences. The reason we have so many policies is because a lot of times, one of the unique things that I've actually gotten to know is industry, when it looks at an industry policy, it is not the most fun read, right? Because you have to look for exactly what you're looking for among reams of paper. So in Telangana, we have simplified that by creating various sectoral focused policies and making sure that, every sector of industry gets the right kind of focus. For example, let's say in an industry policy for somebody who's trying to do PCBs versus somebody who's trying to do LEDs versus somebody who's trying to do a software startup, the requirement for capital or the cap for capex reimbursement is different. Because if somebody is trying to do core manufacturing, let's say setting up a PCB unit or trying to set up a manufacturing unit for EV, their capex requirement is so much more than somebody who's, let's say, trying to create an app. Right. So we made sure that, all these nuances of the sectoral focuses are actually covered in each of the policies. So that is the second step that we did. First, we is the process of applying for incentives and understanding of incentives by TSI pass. The second thing we did is we created an entire sectoral focus policies. And the best part is that there is one POC for each of these sectoral focus policies. So Rashmi, my colleague here, is actually the key person you would reach out to if you want to commercialize your research. She's the one who's going to actually work with you to make sure that, whatever you do in a lab can be commercialized, or, if you need some support with access to labs or whatever else, Rashmi is the point person. If, let's say, you're a woman entrepreneur, you need some support in anything, including IP, let's say, I would be the person. If, let's say, you have some other aerospace related query, we have another colleague. So that is one more thing, not just creating policy, but also making a person nodal officer for that, to make sure that, all the support can be received from start to end. And the third thing that we've actually done is that, we focused on industry, we focused on sector, and the most important thing, how do we drive innovation? We have created a very robust innovation framework in Telangana, and I'm sure most of you would know about T-Hub, which is India's first largest incubator. I don't know if you still have the crown, but T-Hub is and always a pioneer for the startup ecosystem in India. So that is the first thing that we've done way back in 2015. And through T-Hub, we have actually supported more than 1,800 startups so far and raised close to 2,000 crores of startup seed funding. And it is actually, we have Charminar, and then everybody's going to T-Hub. So, and now we are making T-Hub better by creating T-Hub Phase 2, which is going to be hoping that it'll still be India's largest physical incubator so that more and more startups across the spectrum can be a part of the Telangana and the Indian ecosystem. And the second thing that we've actually done is we are also creating something known as T-Works. So a lot of times startups, a happy shift that we are seeing and I think many companies like Qualcomm and many of the R&D companies will be super thrilled, is that many startup founders are actually thinking of creating hardware. And barrier to entry for hardware is extremely difficult, right? The time-wise and the equipment that is needed, the barrier to entry is super high. So what we are doing is we have created something known as T-Works, which is going to be India's largest hardware prototyping center. So the focus there is to create a community where, let's say an entrepreneur or an idea like me who says, I want to make it very glittery and I want it to sparkle or have LEDs in this, but I have no clue about how to do form factor design or how to actually incorporate the various pieces that are needed. We've created T-Works, and it is set to be launched next month. And through T-Works, we are actually going to create an entire network of makers, tinkerers, and it is going to be anybody who can walk in with an idea, any enthusiast. If you want to make something, T-Works is the place for you. So we are reducing the barrier to hardware startups by doing that. And number 3, and what we've actually done is many times when we talk about women entrepreneurs, it's a tick mark, right? So everybody says, women need to be there and all that other stuff. But there has never been a sectoral focus on it. So we've created WeHub, which I actually head. And WeHub is a sector agnostic incubator which supports any stage of startup idea and any sector of enterprise. And one of the unique things about WeHub is that we work with entrepreneurs across the country. We have a virtual incubation program and we have a physical incubator as well. And one of the big successes is that we've been able to decentralize entrepreneurship. What I mean by that is that you don't have to be from Bangalore or Hyderabad or Ahmedabad or Delhi to be a successful woman entrepreneur. We are making sure that we focus on the tier 2, tier 3 parts so that more and more women can be part of the economic workforce and of the startup ecosystem as we know it. And number 4 is that we have also created Rich. I think Rashmi will speak a lot more about that in much more detail and in a much more technical manner. So I think Rashmi will take care of that and she will evangelize more. And we also have something known as TASK, which is Telangana Academy for Skill and Knowledge. The reason I'm telling you so much about each of the initiatives is this actually should encourage more and more startups to understand that a lot of state governments, be it Karnataka, be it Telangana, be it AP, whatever else, we are all wanting to make sure that more and more entrepreneurs think big, think really huge, and be an engine for the economic growth of India. So while we are competing in many other things, when it comes to startups, we are complementing each other to make sure that any innovator, any entrepreneur, any startup enthusiast from any part of the country can start anywhere. They don't have to go to travel to a certain big city, right? Before you wanted to do something big, you had to go to Delhi for certain things, for something to Hyderabad, for Bangalore. So now we are making sure that we're decentralizing the process of the support of for startups. So that is the reason I'm highlighting so much about what we're trying to do in Telangana, obviously product placement as well. But I think that whichever state you choose, whichever government you choose, whichever city you choose, you make sure that you avail of the support mechanisms that are there. And if you want to know more about it, you can go to our portal, which is startuptelangana@telangana.gov.in, and you will get a lot of information there. So with that base, one of the biggest things, again, as I would like to add, I mentioned earlier, is that every government, or the Indian government specifically, is focusing so much on startups and giving all these incentives is because we want to create more and more IP. We want to go from a consuming economy to actually manufacturing economy. We want to go to an economy which creates, and that is why there is a big push on innovation. And IP is obviously a big part of it. A lot of startup founders do not realize the benefit that an IP will actually create. And I think, Hemang, if you can hold a session on how Qualcomm actually has an equal army of IP and licensing lawyers and in parallel to your biggest R&D centers, that will be amazing eye-opener for many of the startups who are part of the forum, right? Because I was in San Diego, and when Qualcomm was just starting out, I was in San Diego because, I was working at Nokia then. And we had a huge building B, which was the manufacturing center for Qualcomm, and then we also had a big licensing and a taxation and a legal compliance center of Qualcomm, which was as big an office. So that shows the corporates and governments have. Yes, thank you so much, Anirban. That shows the focus a lot of companies have on IP, and the support mechanisms vary. So in the central government, I will just reiterate what ma'am has already spoken. There are central government schemes such as facilitating startups IP property protection, SIPP. Then we have the TIFAC, which is the an independent organization under the DST. Then we have NRDC. Then we have BIRAC and the Biotechnology Patent Facilitation Cell. We have DITE, we have SIP, EIT from MIT, then we have the Department of Defense, which has IP, then we have a lot of funding mechanism that is there in BIRAC also. So what I'm trying to get at is every department within the central government has a support mechanism for IP. And what is more heartening is that entities like FICCI and CII have also created their own IP facilitation cells. And coming down to our own state in Telangana, TWorks has an IP facilitation cell, RICH has an IP facilitation cell, CII and the Telangana government have jointly opened an IP facilitation cell where we provide reduced filing costs. That is the first important thing that we would like to highlight. And that is before you even start the process, right? So we have already subsidized the process of filing for an IP, because many startups we've realized do not apply for a patent because they feel that the process itself is so very expensive that they keep putting it off, and that is going to come back and affect them in the long run as their startup starts to scale. And the second thing also is that in Telangana for IP facilitation, we have some very unique, I would not say unique so much, but we have some very friendly IP reimbursement policies. So we are actually going to reimburse the startup companies' IP facilitation costs up to 2 lakh rupees. And for foreign patents that on a single subject matter, and this is very important, right? You can file multiple patents, and the incentives that we give are based on the subject matter that you're choosing. So if it is a domestic patent, per subject, we are actually going to reimburse about 2 lakh rupees. And for a foreign patent that you guys are applying, or kind of a foreign certification, we reimburse about 10 lakh rupees for it. And this reimbursement is, as Meena ma'am had pointed out, will be done in 2 stages. First, 50% will be given when the minute your patent is filed, and when you go to our TWorks or T-Hub or RICH or the CII and Telangana government's facilitation cell, you will get that 50% when you actually file the patent, and the remaining 50% will be when the patent is actually granted. So that is one big thing that you guys can avail. And added to this, we also reimbursed something known as the quality and certification costs. So if you are trying to make, like, let's say an IoT device, that is the simplest thing, right? IoT is no longer vertical. It is actually a horizontal now. IoT is the basis for anything that you want to do forward. So we've actually created a separate incentive for supporting quality and certification costs as well. So let's say you are trying to use a test lab and you're incurring some costs in, let's say, getting a Wi-Fi certification, or if you're trying to get some BIS certification, Telangana government will also reimburse your certification costs. And the second thing also is the testing cost. Before you go to a test lab, you need to do some testing, right, to make sure that you're conforming to so many different standards. We also reimburse that cost. So in addition to IP, we reimburse the certification and test costs. And as ma'am has pointed out, we also do a lot of exhibition reimbursement costs, and we do it on top of the exhibition reimbursement costs that are done by the MSME department at the central government. So as you guys see, the sky is the limit when it comes to attracting startups for every government. So now startups are no longer in a stage where they have to ask. Now they are in a buyer and a seller market. If you guys know about it, they are much more in it's a startups market, right? If you want something, the governments are willing to do it for you. And one of the biggest thing that startups and many of you guys enthusiasts need to do is just reach out to any of us in the government and ask, what can you do for us? And I'm sure that you'll be extremely impressed and in a manner pleasantly surprised by the gamut of incentives you have. And all we are doing this is not to become the stars ourselves, but make sure that we create unicorns. And I've heard there is a new term called as rhinos or something, which is the next step of 100 billion valuation kind of companies. So we are hoping that in addition to creating the unicorns and rhinoceros or whatever the wild animals thing is going on, we want to create more and more rural innovators. We want to make sure that we can drive the tier 2, tier 3 entrepreneurs also to understand that they are not alone. The governments are there with you, and we are hoping that you guys will avail all these benefits. So I'm hoping that what is the scope of? Okay, we'll answer the questions later, I guess, Hema. But with that, I would like to encourage all of you to consider any of the states in Telangana. But one thing you need to absolutely consider is being an innovator and being an IP creator, because we are on an IP forum after all. So thank you so much. I hope that answers, and good luck.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ms. Ravula. That was really very energetic, very power-packed, set of incentives that you shared with all of us, and it does show that I've seen this firsthand in interacting with different folks, in the government at the state level, at the national level. That the government is creating all these things from an end-to-end perspective. You're not just focused on, hey, here's just one thing for IP, but they are really about you are creating products, you're creating innovations. Here's some incentives that will help you in your manufacturing. Here's what will help you in your IP. Here's what will help you in your marketing. And facilitation of so many high visibility events. So the government is playing a very active role in getting a lot of business to startups. And that's very, very encouraging. And since the question was asked, and since you're also so passionate about the women entrepreneurship system, could you please, address the question, right, which is the scope for women in the IP sector, and maybe if you can share an example of IP that WE Hub has created, right? How are you encouraging women entrepreneurs to be more active in intellectual property?
So first thing is that I'm not clear what it means when you say you want to actually become an IP facilitator or you want to create IP. So if I can get a little bit of clarity on that, Mr. Kumar, that would be really nice. So, but oh yeah, of course. Yeah, so we actually there is a see when it comes to IP creation or anything else. One thing I would like to really highlight is that innovation does not have a gender. Gender actually comes into play when you're actually looking at the kind of customer centric focus that comes in. That is where gender comes into play. But for innovation, for raising funding, I would like to really highlight that the product and the idea is the foundation. Gender just becomes an incidence. So that is something that I would like to really highlight on. But having said that, in the Telangana government, we actually provide an additional 10% of capex reimbursement. We provide 0.5% more of interest subvention. So there are a lot of additional incentives that are provided to more and more women so that they can actually take up these kind of blue sea areas or areas where we don't see a lot of women. So there are all these support mechanisms that are there. And if you have a specific question, I will share my email here, and please do write to me, and we will be more than happy to help out and answer your question in detail, maybe even over a personal face-to-face conversation. And the second question is from Mr. I think there are some private questions. May I answer, because these are quite open as well? So one of the
yeah,
is it okay?
Sure, you can. Maybe one.
I'm sorry if I'm taking. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is actually a very general question that we do get in the government, not just at Telangana government, but many governments, right? So one of the biggest thing is many of the times we do not get all this information from a website. Kindly provide all these details through emails. So this is actually a question which is asked of many state governments, because see, we always sit down and in the government, we feel that, we are actually sharing all this and we are being very vocal about it. But there is always gray areas. So for this, if you look at every state government startup portal, if you look at startup.telangana.gov.in for Telangana, and there is a Maharashtra State Innovation Cell, there is a Karnataka thing, you can actually get all this information there. We will try to also send it through emails, but the first source of information for most of you would actually be your startup portal. And we would highly encourage you go to the Startup India page, you go to the Startup Telangana page, you go to the Startup Karnataka page, you will get all this information there. And even better, you will get a nodal person there. So we request that you please consider that while we also work on our end to make information more accessible and more dispensable. Diffusible, my bad. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Rabula. Let me now invite over Ms. Rashmi. And before I bring her over, I'd like to just share a few words about her background. Ms. Rashmi Pimpale is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer at Research and Innovation Center of Hyderabad, RICH, RICH. It is an initiative which has been conceived to unlock the national treasure created by the top scientific research institutions in the Telangana state. And it's also created to actively facilitate the process of taking their research to market. She has been with RICH strategy and portfolio development for almost 5 years. Ms. Rashmi, please share a few words with us about this amazing initiative you have.
Thank you so much, Hemang, for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank ASSOCHAM for giving this opportunity to have this conversation and to interact with all of you. I'm Rashmi Pimple, and I head the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, RICH, which is a Government of Telangana initiative, which was started in 2017 with the idea that all the entities in the research and innovation space should be brought together on a common platform where they can interact more frequently and do some really collaborative effort. When we started Rich, the idea was to mine out all the research or innovation that is happening in the premier research and academic institutions in Hyderabad. And you will be surprised to know that Hyderabad itself has over 40 research and academic institutions, which are world class in mostly in the life sciences, agri, and aerospace and defense sector. And most of us are not aware of the kind of research that goes into this research organizations. Because it's not their job to promote their research or think about commercialization. So the government wanted some entity to act as a bridge between the actual research that is happening and somebody to take it on a next level for commercialization or for translation of that research. So in the process, we also work very closely with all the industry, startups, NGOs, and civic bodies as well. And recently, we have also been nominated as the nodal agency for the Mega City Cluster Initiative, which is the initiative of the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of Telangana. So a lot of our work usually is with the startups, and we help them in whatever way we can in terms of getting access to industry connects, finding hospital test beds, for example, or getting some good clinician advice because they need validation. Mostly life sciences, the startups in life sciences have very different requirements from what is required of a IT startup, for example. So validation, hospital test beds, clinical advice is something that we assist all the startups with. Even in agri, we help them with industry connects and with connections to various institutions or market access. And so I thought I will share some of my learnings and my experience with being in this IP field for so long, even before Rich, and then working with a lot of startups at Rich. And thank you so much, Dipti, for giving a very nice summary of what we do at Telangana and the Telangana innovation ecosystem that I'm sure is very helpful and people will really find it very useful. So I would like to start by posing a question to the startups and SMEs in the audience, that how many of us realize that IP pervades our lives in ways, even personal and professional lives, in ways more than we can imagine. So I'm sure most of us will agree that, we really don't think about it in that way. But if you take a very closer look at, say, the fitness brands you're wearing, for example, or the telecast of your favorite show, or the music that you hear, or the software that you're using currently at your work, each and every component, each and every activity has some IP component attached to it. Then the question arises, why then, when startups or SMEs start building their businesses or start developing new products, why is it that not a lot of importance is given to IP? Not due consideration is given, how much it is deserved. So in my experience, there are 2-3 very prominent reasons for this. The first one would be, in my opinion, there is a general lack of awareness of the importance of IP. Now, usually the value is extremely underestimated, And more often than not, because there is not there is no information. I mean, the information is not available. I mean, or it's very, I mean, the people don't know about it either, or they know very little about it. So due care is not taken whenever there is an opportunity to file a patent or any kind of IP. And in my experience with the work with startups, there is also another extreme where, I'll give you an example where one of the startups felt that just by filing a patent application, uh, he thought that his product is novel and innovative. And that's not how it works. It should be understood that going through the entire filing process and prosecution is a very lengthy, time consuming, and an expensive effort. And most of the times, a basic freedom to operate opinion is also not taken. So there is some uh, lack of this kind of awareness. One other thing could be that, not having common knowledge of what all can be protected. For example, we all know the most common form of IP is, of course, patents. But there are other forms of IP like trademarks, copyrights, plant varieties, which can prove as a very, very valuable asset to the company. So, for example, a diagnostic startup, if it is building some product, if it is building a device, they can protect their design, the image itself of the design for a long period of years by keeping competition out of without letting them copy any of their designs, or they can use a trademark for as long as they want. So one other thing in my experience, I've found that there is a lack of uh, how to go about it and where to find things. We all know that there is ample expertise and information available in this field. Like just now we saw there are so many government schemes which are exclusively dedicated to startups and SMEs to avail of all these avenues. And lot of organizations, even law firms, government, private organizations are doing a very good job of disseminating this information. It's just that, then the question arises, if this is the case, then what exactly needs to be done? So in my opinion, we could do a multiple of things, starting with programs such as this one, where you create awareness and where you open up opportunities for training through conferences, workshops, to kind of dispel the myths that surround the IP and to spread the correct form of information. One other thing that comes to my mind is, that can there be a repository where all this information is readily available for anyone to go and see? Information on experts, information on schemes, information on funding. We saw that there is a lot available, but how will the startups and SMEs come to know unless it's disseminated? This kind of correct information is disseminated to them. I also think that mentoring of startups go a long way. I mean, somebody to show them the direction, to show them that this is important, uh, is extremely important and useful. Um, we can also consider use of technology, for example. There have been instances, there have been companies which use AI to reduce the time and effort that is required in patent analysis and searches, because we all know searching patents and analyzing them is a very, very lengthy process. And lastly, I think if the incubators could adopt policies and tools, uh, you know, to encourage and promote IP protection of their incubatees, that itself will be a great help to all the startups that are incubated there. So I think I'll just end by saying that not filing or not protecting your IP, I mean, the startup should bear in mind that, not protecting your IP or intellectual property rights at the right time could mean a loss of, serious licensing opportunities, or worse, getting blocked by the competitor because of their IP on a similar product. So my only advice would be is that IP is not the reserve of large businesses. It is critical to the success of every company, however small it may be. So I think startups and SMEs should really consider devising an IP strategy as one of their topmost priorities. With this, I'll end, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rashmi. Again, I cannot agree more with what you've just said. IP requires being proactive. It's not something that you can wake up a few years later. And we've met startups that have said that, okay, after I launch my product, I will go for, let's say, protecting all the IP rights around it. And it doesn't really work that way in their favor. And it's very encouraging to know that through RICH and all the initiatives you have in Telangana, especially, you have this mindset of taking a research initiative, to the upward journey, research into products and that are finally commercialized, but also, they are protected through various IP rights. So thank you so much for your remarks. We are joined by Ms. Asta Grover. So thankfully, she was able to, resolve the emergency at her end. And I'd like to invite her to share a few words. But before I do that, again, I'd like to briefly introduce her to all of you. Ms. Asta Grover is the head of the Startup India Hub at Invest India. She has over 6.5 years of experience in the consulting and strategy domain. Prior to joining Invest India, she worked with HSBC Bank and AP Kearney. Her experience ranges across financial institutions group, working on projects from APAC and MER region in the domains of market entry, competitive benchmarking, and innovation. As a part of the Startup India Hub under Invest India, she co-leads alliances and partnerships with corporates, countries, and ministries to drive programs for startups. Ms. Grover, thank you so much for joining us, and I'd like to invite you to share a few words about your initiatives.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hemant. And my apologies to everyone that I could not join in earlier, but nonetheless, I think I've made in time before the Q&A with the participants. Hello to my colleagues and peer, Ms. Meena ma'am, Sudipto, Deepti, Rashmi. I could just hear what Rashmi was concluding, but some excellent remarks I feel have already been exchanged on IP and patents. And I do have a sense that a lot of incentives which are provided under Startup India for patents may have been covered by my previous speakers. But just to, give a head start to how we started, right? How we realized that innovation is very important for startups is that is the distinguishing factor between a startup and an MSME. The need that a government had to create a new initiative or a scheme for startups was that the distinguishing factor was the innovation. So the innovation can come in any format, be it design, product, process, improvement over existing or completely new. So with this thought, we realized that, one, let's support startups, and second, how to help them protect their innovation. So what I'm going to do is just briefly touch upon how you can help, get avail incentives from Startup India for the incentives bit, but I believe a lot of that has already been covered. So I will also just quickly mention a quick other pointers for the benefit of the audience on what they do after they have got their innovation in place. So very quickly, starting with the incentives, one, Hemant, I was also doing the Lab 2 Pro course, and very wonderful course, goes through the entire journey, captures everything in detail. So for the audience who haven't done that course, encourage everyone to do that. Will give you a very, very good perspective on how to do things, and not just knowing about them, but how to implement them as well. At Startup India, what we have done is usually the first question is, where do I find facilitators to find, to apply for this innovation? So a pool of more than 500 facilitators, including trademark and patent, have been impaneled by the government. The patent attorney fees is paid by the CGT-MSc office. So you don't have to pay to the attorney yourself. You can get this list, and the list is divided as per states, as per the sectors in which they deal. It is available on our website, startupindia.gov.in. and would be an easy reference for any entrepreneur who wants to file an innovation. These attorneys can help you free of cost. The second benefit for a startup recognized under DPIIT is that and I think for me, this is one of the crucial investment criteria, is it provides you a fast track of patent examinations. So, while earlier it was taking more than 3 years, 5 years, or if in a general line, it also takes that much. But we realize that with the help of a patent, a startup can fast track its investment journey, can attract more pool of capital, and fast track its product to the market. There is a separate queue for examination of startups which are recognized by DPIIT, and on an average it takes anywhere between 1 to 2 years, but the fastest we have done, we're doing right now is less than 1 year also. So 81 days, 90 days and all, we have done those kind of fast tracking of patents. The third thing, which is, you get 80% exemption on the patent application fees. A decent enough incentive, not huge of a monetary value, but good enough to apply through this route. What I want to touch base is that, yes, while many people are not aware about the facilitators that are impaneled and, the information is out there, one, do seek out to them. While my colleagues and peers have already touched about the specific incentives, but I just wanted to highlight 3 things once you have your patent in place and once you're ready to take over the world. Look out for how Startup India is helping entrepreneurs is one, through the funding scheme. So if you're in the early stage, look out for the seed funding scheme by various departments, not just by Startup India, but, by DST, DBT, you have various schemes, and people often run after angel investors or, investors or VCs. So look at these grant monies option as well. If you're looking for market access, highly recommend getting onboarded on government e-marketplace and looking at domestic programs that organizations run and international market access. Today, our Honorable Prime Minister is addressing the startups for the Viva Tech Fest in France, and DPIIT has sponsored 18 startups to have a dedicated pavilion there and investment and pitching opportunities with there. So such kind of opportunities do open up for you after that. And third, just in a nutshell, is that if you're looking to find the right information, right connect about any state, about any policy, just visit our website and you'll have all that detail. And it is a digital mode to help you connect with mentors, incubators, any state policy, any investors and the likes. So I think with that, Hemang, I'll end here, and if there are any questions, happy to take. Yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Grover. Those are, again, very excellent initiatives that personally we have seen over the past few years, the kind of support and encouragement that the startups are getting, especially through the Startup India scheme. And I must also, I think Ms. Deepti also mentioned earlier, the portals, especially the Startup India portal and all the other portals, they are so helpful, so clear. In my experience, people used to always ask me that, hey, where can I find this information? And if I just point them to that domain, everything is listed out there. It's really plain and clear for them. I think there are a couple of questions that we received in the chat box. There's one question which is, just give me a minute, sorry. I think there's a question from which I received directly. Was this gentleman is from Sikkim, and access to information support which is available in other parts of the country is often absent in that region. So what can this person do? I'm not sure. Possibly, Asta, could you answer that?
Yeah, so I'll take that in 2 parts. One is that, when you start up, you need to know about 3 things. One, the central government policy that applies to you, the state policy that applies, and the sector related incentives or policies that apply to you, right? So at least for our website, I will not say that is at the perfect best shape, but we have tried and simplified this for you. So if you go to Startup India website, you go to state, all the state schemes summarized for you. These are the financial incentives. These are the non-fiscal incentives. How do you apply? Are you eligible? That's on the state. Similarly, for sectors, we have done it as per the mapping by ministry. So let's say you are a renewable energy startup or you're setting up a solar cell plant. You just select the ministry and the department that applies for this, and you see the schemes apply, especially applicable for startups and entrepreneurs, not for the industry. So you are able to capture that here. So and at the central level, like I mentioned already, by all the Startup India incentives are there. So we have tried and give this attempt. It's just a matter of exploring now. And for the benefit of all, maybe I'll just put it in the chat window, the links for these schemes and information.
Great. Thank you so much. And there's a question which is, I guess I'll keep it open for everyone, on the speaker list, which is, what are the guidelines on the valuations of IPRs? Is there any guideline? How should a startup approach it?
I'll take a shot at it. I'll give a cheeky answer. It's in the eye of the beholder,
Yes.
but it's only half as cheeky. The valuation of the IPR is the value that comes across from an arm's length transaction, right? So let's say you have, let me use the startup cell plant example that Asta gave, right? So let's say you have unique IPR with the, can you hear me? Am I coming across? Yeah. Let's say you have unique IPR with the microinverters. Let's say unique IPR with storage cell, right? And this may be extremely valuable to another company who wants to license that, right? And what you transact as part of that commercial negotiation is what the valuation becomes. So there is no one number that we can give. Patents in pharma industries are valued very, very differently in the way they're valued as opposed to the industry that we come from, which is the telecom industry, right? If you take a modern cell phone, it literally bears the IPR of close to easily 1 million patents, easily 1 million, right? And there are companies like Qualcomm, there are companies like Nokia, like Ericsson, like Huawei, many folks who have invented, contributed to standards, and these complex products like cell phones read on patents by multiple places. So the valuation in cell phones is a very different valuation than automotive industry or pharma industry or biochemical industries, right? So I'm sorry, I cannot give a crisper answer than that, but the short answer is that it is a result of arm's-length commercial negotiations.
Thank you. Deepti, would you also like to chime in? I thought you were saying, but
I think Sudipto very pleasantly mentioned that. The other guidance that we usually give to startups when they do approach with a kind of question is that we actually suggest that, unless it is extremely new, what is the, if there is a ancillary or something around the area that you're working on, what are the valuations looking like that in those kind of areas is one more. It'll give you some idea on the other thing. It's very important that you actually do a little bit of analysis on that. And number 3 also is that it is also very important, the kind of, let's say you're actually looking at a certain kind of investor to invest in you, you can actually go research on the kind of value that they have placed on, let's say, IP or things like that. I think these 3 will give you some idea, but end of the day, the answer is the valuation is what you assign to it. And if you give a number to, like, let's say your first customer and the guy says, yes, that is going to be a valuation. So always go higher than what you would even imagine. And obviously, then it will come to the right balancing act. So don't try to undersell or don't try to oversell, but with a research, you kind of come up with a number which actually will be much higher than what you would actually expect for it. I hope that kind of answers a little bit.
it does. There's one other question which also came in, which is this gentleman asks about how he can protect his hyper-local e-commerce business in a new sector through IP. Deepti, want to take a stab at it?
This is for IP experts, I believe, but I think that when you talk about e-commerce or any kind of creative fields and IP, it's a little bit tricky and a little bit gray. So I think you need to go to I'm sure this forum has many experts in IP. You need to go to the, one of the many experts to kind of figure out, but I think it might be slightly tricky, as is what my 2 cents it. Asta, if you want to answer, this will be good as well.
Asta messaged me separately. She had to drop off due to another situation came up at her end.
To add to Dipti's comment, so obviously, by the way, take the L2 Pro course. I think you'll get part of your answers in that course. But generally speaking, if you think about abstract ideas or algorithms, like for instance, one example is if you cannot patent addition, because if you were to patent something like addition, then that prevents anyone else from using addition. So hence things like that are not patentable, right? And the determination becomes more complex, especially for generally for business process patents. The determination can get quite complex in terms of whether it's non-obvious, is it truly novel, is it a abstract concept that cannot be, right? Was it reduced to practice? Was it reduced to a specific invention, right? So I think we cannot give a very clean answer without looking at the circumstances. My recommendation would be go through the L2 Pro course. Once you think you have patentable subject matter, develop your concept, develop your invention disclosure, and then work with one of the patent facilitators in your state, right? He or she will be able to guide you as to how best to draft the claims of your patent.
Great. Thank you so much, Sudipto, for that. And I noticed we are right on the dot, and we don't have any further questions. So that said, I'd like to also share that we consistently had close to 200 attendees in this session. So they took out their precious time. So we thank all the attendees for for their attention, for their insight, and deeply it shows how much passion, how much curiosity you have for IP rights. I thank all of our speakers because everyone gave some actionable insights. It was not just so much about, hey, here is what we have. It's also about, here's what you can do about it. So take action, implement it in your startups, implement it in your businesses. And again, if you look at the speaker spectrum, we have starting from research all the way to product to manufacturing. We covered every aspect, marketing, how to get business. IP plays a very important part. And I also like to plug L2 Pro, having been a key proponent of this program. It's a completely free course. You can access it on your phone, through iOS, through Android. You can access it on the web, on any device that you have at l2proindia.com. If there are 3 modules, if you take the assessments at the end of each module, you get a certificate on the spot issued by DPIIT, NLU Delhi, and Qualcomm. All you have to do is pass the exam. It has 60%. And if you take the help of our beginner and summary videos, those are overall completely 5 minutes each per session, you can do wonders for your knowledge on IP rights. So thank you again for everyone for your time and attention. Thank you all the speakers, and thank you AstroCham for arranging this. Really appreciate it. Have a great day and a good evening, Sudipto.
Thank you, Hemant, for being a wonderful moderator.
Jai Hind, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.